Hello everybody, welcome to this YouTube video. It's just going to be a quick 5-minute video because on Wednesday I've got an economics markets in action exam, AS level. I think it's with OCR. I'm not 100% sure. I'll put it in the description whether it is or not. I'm pretty sure it is. So I'm just going to do a quick 5-minute video on what I believe is most of the parts of it. Now it's not going to have the elasticity of demand or supplies, so I'll make another video on that. I'll upload that shortly after this one. I'm going to be reading from cards, so that's what I'm looking at here. So, merit or demerit goods. So a merit good has unknown additional benefits and is underprovided by the market mechanism. And a demerit good has unknown additional costs and it is overproduced by the market mechanism. And this a common cause of both is information failure. Now solutions would be provision of information, tax or subsidy, regulation or state provision. Obviously not in the case of demerit goods, you won't have state provision, but for merit goods then state provision maybe. An evaluation point, so that's if it's a good few marks the question you want. However, it could be misinformation, and information is easily ignored, and also we don't know the degree of the merit or demerit good, so we don't know how much of a merit good or how much of a demerit good it is. Negative externality, it is when the social cost is greater than the private cost. These goods are overproduced and consumed as the third party cost is not taken into account. Now, I'll show you the little diagram. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I think you can see it there. So this gap here, the shaded area, is the negative externality. You can see that marginal social cost is higher than the marginal private cost on the supply. Okay. Solutions to this would be indirect tax. So a tax on cigs is an example, which there currently is. Pollution permits. So the polluter pays the principal, and regulation. So laws and government legislation. An evaluation point. So for the however's. If it's a few marks a question, you could use the polluter pays the principal. The money that's raised, so the tax, might not necessarily be spent on correcting the externality, so it could be spent on something else. And also a big point is we don't know the size of the externality, so it's difficult to correct it properly when we don't know the size of it. Okay, now positive externality. It's when the social benefit is higher than the private benefit. These goods are underproduced and consumed, and the effect on the third party again is ignored. Got a little diagram. I don't know if you'll be able to see this one. So that we don't tend to shade on this diagram, but that's kind of what it looks like. So solutions would be state provision, subsidies and regulation, so laws and such. Evaluation points for the however, it's a big question. Subsidies might not be passed on, so the producer might just absorb the extra. If the government provided a subsidy, and for example for life jackets, if the life jacket was £10, the government provided £2 for each life jacket to encourage consumption. It would lower the price. but the producers might just absorb that by, say, putting the price up to £12, and then the consumer still pays the £10. And sorry, the opportunity cost. So what else could those £2 be spent on? State provision, abuse, or overused. So people going to the doctors every day for silly things. That's an example of state provision being abused. And we also don't know the size of the externality again, so it's difficult to correct it. Okay. Public goods, we're going to move on to. These are non-rivalrous and non-excludable. A cause of failure is free riders, because of free riders you get missing markets. Entrepreneurs can't charge, so they won't supply. This creates a missing market. A solution to this is state provision. For example, streetlights. You can never have privately owned streetlights because you couldn't really charge. There would be no way to collect money and exclude those who don't pay. It would be very difficult. So state provision. Quasi-public goods. The part public and part private, and they're either rivalrous or they're either rivalrous or excludable. For example, a beach. Everybody can use the beach, but there's a limited amount of space. So although it's free, it is excludable if it's full. Okay, now the consumer surplus. I'll just show you a little diagram. If you can see that, it's just a demand curve, and at the quantity, go across to the price, and above the price but below the demand curve, this area is the consumer surplus. So this is what's actually paid, and this is what the consumer is willing to pay. Okay. It's the difference between what consumers are prepared to pay for a good and what they actually pay. The producer surplus is the difference between what they are willing to supply at and what they actually supply at. So, I'll just show you a little diagram there. This is just a supply curve. And it's, so it's just a difference. At this price, they're willing to supply this much at the most. Let's have a look. Producer surplus. So this is this is the cheapest, isn't it? It's the lowest price. So this is by selling at this is the market price. By selling here, they're saving this consumer surplus, because this is the lowest that they were willing to go to. Okay. So the difference between what they are willing to supply at and what they actually supply at. Allocative efficiency is where resources are used to produce goods and services that consumers wish to buy. It is where consumer satisfaction is maximised. So it's getting the right quantity of us. On a PPC curve, you've got two variables, two goods. If good A was £5 per unit and good B was £2 per unit, it would be more allocative efficient for the producer to produce more of the £5 good than the £2 good, as it would be more allocatively efficient. So a higher price is a signal to producers to switch to produce more of that product. A big however on this is market failures like externality. Yeah, and also we've got time lags, and the price doesn't reflect the true cost. Moving on to tradable pollution permits. Benefits: revenue from selling them is an incentive to go green. So if a firm has a pollution permit, they can sell it if they don't use it, and they get money for for selling it, of course, and that's an incentive to go green, pollute less. And also another benefit: heavy polluters have to purchase them, adding an additional cost to production. Negatives: it just moves pollution, basically, because there's still that higher limit to the amount. There's still the same limit to the amount of pollution that there can be. If it's sold on, then the pollution is just being moved to a different firm. If one firm doesn't pollute and decides to sell their pollution permit, the pollution is just moved to another firm. So it doesn't really reduce pollution. It controls the amount, but it doesn't reduce it. Also, firms may move to countries where there are more pollution permits, and they're cheaper. So that's another negative. Regulation. A benefit of regulation is that it reduces the externality, and the second benefit is that it adds stigma. So if you make something illegal and somebody's caught doing that, the stigma attached to that is usually enough to put most people off. Although you could argue that a negative would be that for some people the stigma attached is what cool or attracts a certain crowd of people. The negatives is regulatory capture, which are loopholes in the law that that there are always ways round of doing things. So it's subject to that, and also the cost of policing it. If you set a law, then to enforce that law, you're going to have to police it, and that costs. Okay, and indirect tax, which is really, I think, is the only tax that you need to know for this markets in action exam. Okay, the benefits of indirect tax is that it increases government revenue, and it imposes a cost on production, reducing the externality. That is, of course, if the money is fed back into correcting the externality. And also another point sort of attached to that is that the polluter pays the principal. The costs of this, so the negatives of indirect tax, is that it has a higher impact on the poor. If there is a 5p tax on a chocolate bar, and you have a small income, then if someone has twice the income of another person, then that 5p tax is going to have twice the effect on the person with a smaller income. The collection costs can be quite high of indirect tax, because they aren't paid directly to the government. There is a cost to collecting it. They're avoidable. If you set yourself up as, I think it's a religion, then you don't pay tax, and some people choose to do that. You might not want to put that in in your answer, but indirect tax is avoidable. That's a point to note. And also, the tax collected is not necessarily spent on correcting the market failure. Okay, subsidies. I've only got one positive. It reduces the cost of production, increasing supply. So before, as I mentioned, if there's a £10 life jacket, the government supplies £2 of that, it's £8, so it's cheaper for the consumer. It increases consumption of that product, thus increasing supply to fulfill that demand. And the negatives is the opportunity cost. So the subsidy, that £2 could be spent on something else. Also might not be passed on. Another very important point is that it's and you can get a good few marks from this with a diagram and whatnot, or maybe 2 diagrams. Subsidies aren't effective, or not very effective, if the product is inelastic. You would need a large subsidy to reduce demand for the product. Okay, the determinants of demand, which are a change in tasting preference, income, and size of population. So I'll just say that again. The determinants of demand are a change in tasting preference, income, and size of population. Determinants of supply, which is stuff that makes okay, determinants of supply are a change in the cost of production, for example wages or raw materials, government legislation, so tax or subsidies, and weather. Weather does play a big part in the determinants of supply. For example, food crops. If the weather is very bad that season, then you might not get as many potatoes growing. So weather does play a big part in the determinants of supply. I hope this video was quite useful. It's not the best video, but I'm hoping if there were a few things that you weren't quite sure on, you can rewind it, watch a little bit of it again, take notes, whatever. But I'm hoping that it would help with exam revision, and good luck. Keep posted for more videos. Hit subscribe, add a comment. Thank you for watching.